Impact of influence, the Murdaugh family murders. This is the unfolding story of a powerful South Carolina family, the mysterious deaths they are linked to, and our quest to bring you the truth. Hello, friend. Always so grateful that you decided to spend time with us, Matt Harris and Seton Tucker. Matt Harris Podcast at gmail.com, on Facebook, Murdaugh Podcast. And this episode is all about the Gloria Satterfield fall and the recent legal filings that have occurred due to Alec Murdaugh's recent statements.
Yes, last episode we discussed a filing by Alec Murdaugh's defense team trying to bring the Satterfields into this federal court lawsuit. And Eric Bland, the attorney for the Satterfield family, held a press conference in which he said that he believes that the press and the public are being played and does not agree with anything that Harpootlian and Griffin are saying in Alec's defense.
Yes, the idea, he says that it's a false narrative, misinformation campaign to propose that the Satterfield's two sons be on the hook for possibly having to pay compensation to Nautilus. That's what Ronnie Richter told reporters. And Satterfield's two sons have collected $7.5 million in settlements from others allegedly involved in Murdaugh's scheme to divert the $3.8 million from Nautilus to himself. But none of the settlement money the heirs have collected came from Nautilus. Bland said the $7.5 million is the collective amount from settlements from Murdaugh's former law firm, PMPED, attorney Corey Fleming and his law firm, banker Chad Westendorf and his bank, Palmetto State Bank, and the Bank of America, and none of the parties admitted any fault.
Yes, and I also think we should point out that Bland was successful in collecting more than the original settlement that the Satterfields were supposed to receive.
Much more, actually, yes.
And after the press conference, they released the audio of Alec Murdaugh being interviewed by the insurance adjuster for Nautilus, and also the entire report from Nautilus Insurance Company.
So let's hear some of the interviewed with Alec, and we'll stop and comment as we go through it. Let's begin.
My name is Bryant McGowan. I'm in Moselle, South Carolina. Today is Thursday, March 29th. Time's approximately 11:15 a.m. I'm meeting with Alexander Murdaugh. Mr. Murdaugh, you understand I'm recording this statement?
Yes, sir.
And I'm doing so with your permission?
Yes, sir.
Can I have your full name, please?
Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
There we hear it from the horse's mouth, how he pronounces his name. We've had a lot of questions about that.
He says Murdaugh.
Yep. And I've been told that Murdaugh was the more formal way to pronounce his name, but Murdaugh was how they pronounced it amongst friends. So that makes me think he's kind of trying to possibly endear this investigator to him.
Okay, see you more.
Why don't you just go ahead and start off by filling me in as to how your day unfolded that day.
I went to work that morning and I received a phone call from my wife that Gloria was injured, seriously injured, and asking me if I could come home. I immediately left and headed to Moselle. It's about a 12 to 13 minute ride under normal circumstances, and I appreciated the fact that this was a serious injury, so I would estimate that I made it in probably 10 minutes or so. And upon arriving, found Gloria, my wife, my son Paul, and my employee Ronnie Freeman on we call it a patio, for lack of a better term, landing area at the bottom of the steps. Gloria was there, sitting up, big pool of blood, a lot of blood on the side of her face, and shortly after I arrived here, EMS arrived and tended to her.
Okay, so important parts of that. One is that he says he's there before the paramedics.
Yes, and Fitz News had an article this week that disputes this. There was an investigator named Steve Peterson who worked for Andy Savage, and Andy Savage briefly represented Sandy Smith. So if you're following me, and he talked to one of the caretakers, and the caretaker disputes that Alec Murdaugh arrived before emergency medical services.
Ronnie Freeman was there. And I also want to point out the steps, by the way. There's a picture of the steps. We've seen it before, but in case you've forgotten, it's not a giant staircase. It is 6 to 8 steps, probably, maybe 6 steps. And it's not a whole story, even steps. So let's hear some more of Alec's interview.
You said when you left for work that morning, you didn't know that Gloria was going to be coming to work. I mean, coming for any purpose to the house.
I didn't know that day.
Right.
My wife knew she was coming.
Okay. Did you? And when you talked with your wife, you understood that she was coming for what reason?
Gloria was coming to be paid. My mom inadvertently left town without paying Gloria for work and had asked Maggie to pay her on her behalf. And so Gloria was coming here to get paid.
Okay.
So that's important for the fact of whether it's a workers' comp claim or not. Was she coming to work or just to pick up a check?
Right. And in the Fitz News article, Peterson says that Freeman, who is, again, an employee, a caretaker at the Moselle property, says that Gloria would come through every day around 8:30. She would walk up to the house. She would have her McDonald's cup and her purse on her shoulder. And that was every morning. So
the implication is there that Ronnie Freeman is saying that she was coming to work.
Yes.
And that's not how Alec would want it to play out.
Exactly.
And were you able to speak with Gloria before she was taken away in the ambulance?
I was.
Okay. Did you ask her what happened?
Sure, I asked her what happened. I mean, the first thing I was making sure that Gloria, I was trying to assess her mental capability at the time. Did she know where she was? Did she know what was going on? That type of thing. And, asking her if she knew me. Did she know Maggie? Did she know Paul? Did she know Ronnie? Did she know where she was? So
how was she responding to this?
She knew those things. She knew where she was. She knew who I was. I mean, she obviously was not functioning at full capacity, but she did. She knew those things.
Okay.
Well, this is the big question. Was he telling the truth in this interview or in his latest court filings where he denies that this ever happened?
Well, and remember the 911 call. She's not aware. She's not awake at all. Alec's not even there when you hear Maggie and Paul.
And they say she's not able to communicate. She's mumbling.
Yeah, she's mumbling. She can't communicate. So they're saying, I guess, from the end of the 911 call till the EMS arrives, in that little window, Alec is saying he arrives and she
got some clarity.
She got jabby-jawed, all the kind of details he'd ever need to make this fly. But it sounds suspect to me, and I'm surprised the adjuster didn't listen to the 911 call and be like, something's crazy here.
Well, again, Alec has massive credibility issues,
Yes.
and I don't think that we will ever know because the other people who were there that day, besides the two caretakers, are no longer with us.
No, but the EMT, the emergency people, can say whether Alec was there when they got there or not.
Well, that's true.
That would blow the whole case out of the water. They're like, he wasn't there. Then everything he is making up, he never talked to Gloria, and that blows everything out of the water.
Well, and there's questions to why the insurance investigation did not question the other two people who were there.
There's more than 2 other people if you count the paramedics. So I assume there's 2 paramedics.
True.
And then there is a caretaker and another employee
Yes.
of the Murdaughs. All right, let's listen to more of the interview.
Now, here at your home, I know you and I covered a lot of information regarding the dogs you've got.
Yes, sir.
Why don't you just go down I think you said you have 4 dogs.
4 dogs. We have Bubba, who is a yellow lab, and he's the oldest. Estimate that he's probably 6 years old. We have Bourbon, who is a chocolate lab, who I estimate is probably 1.5 years old. maybe younger than that. I'd say a year and a half at the oldest. We have Blue, who I estimate is a year old. And Blue is a Labrador Poodle mix, so a Labradoodle. And then we have Sassy, who is a German short hair, who is no more than 6 months old.
Okay.
So there's the list of dogs. People always wonder about the dogs.
Yes, we've gotten so many listener questions about that, especially where Bubba was, and we know now after the hearing that he is with Blanca.
And we know that Bubba was the star of the trial, of the murder trial, and he is a rambunctious one. We know that from all the talk. Let's continue on with the interview.
And when you were talking with Gloria before she was taken away, did she describe the chain of events in any way to you? Obviously, she was out of it.
She indicated that the dogs had caused her to fall.
Okay. And she was at the base of the front steps.
She was.
When you arrived.
My understanding was she was sitting on the base of the steps when I arrived. Now, my understanding from my wife, when she found her, she was unconscious, and her head was on the landing area, and her feet were up the steps.
So she was upside down.
Well,
almost.
I think she was laying on her back or on her side, but her feet were up on like the second step, and her head was on the ground. So she was literally on the steps with her head down on the brick landing area.
Okay.
And that jives with kind of what they were saying on the 911 call, but I still find it interesting that he's explaining all this, but he's not saying anything about the 911 call. He doesn't say, I get there and Paul's on the phone. They had just hung up. There's no mention of a 911 call. I find that weird. Here's some more of the interview.
And she was familiar with Bubba, Blue, and Sassy. Did she ever have any problems with any of those dogs?
No.
Okay.
She was familiar with them. And, she would have been familiar with Bourbon before she went off to, I don't know if we ever had her. I'm trying to think. I don't know that we ever had Bourbon at home before, but she was certainly familiar with with Bubba, Blue, and Sassy.
Okay. Did she, during the course when she would be working for you, would she feed the dogs?
Sure.
Okay.
There've been occasions where she did.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm trying to think of anything. Did you ever have any other incidences involving any problems with the dogs being aggressive or any similar? I guess any kind of incident with a complaint about the dogs.
We have never had any issue with any of the dogs being vicious or aggressive in the sense of violence or biting or attacking or any of that. And the problem is, and why we sent Bourbon to obedience school is, as I told you earlier, she's so hyper, she would stir, all the dogs get stirred up and they compete to be petted and to get attention. And so, what I'm assuming happened is when Gloria pulled up, the dogs are, rushing her.
For affection.
And
not aggression, but affection.
And Bourbon had only been back for a day or so. So, the way they all do when Bourbon's here is different than they do when it's just them.
Okay.
Poor Bourbon. He's the fall guy.
He's getting framed, man. He's getting framed by Alec on this one. Bourbon was the chocolate lab retriever, described as hyperactive, it says in the filing. And that was the dog had just gotten back from obedience school.
And also this adjuster and Alec seem to be kind of friendly. I have questions of whether they possibly knew each other.
That is interesting. All right, well, here's some more.
So the people that were on on site when the ambulance came were you, your wife Maggie, your son Paul, and an employee of yours, Ronnie Freeman.
That's correct.
And was anybody with Gloria when she drove up? I assume she drove her own car here?
That's correct.
And was there anybody in the car with her?
No, sir.
Okay. So there was no witness to the chain of events?
To the fall itself?
Right.
No, sir. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And do you have any surveillance cameras around the exterior of the home?
No, sir.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, he doesn't call him Paul.
No.
In this particular time in front of authority.
And we hear that there were no surveillance cameras, and that was a big question during the murder trial. Why there are no surveillance cameras on this rural property.
Yeah. Well, they just assume they're safe, I guess. I mean, they had some trail cameras. We know that, but that doesn't help any of the areas where things were going on. But that is very unusual, I would think, for someone to not have even a ring camera.
Well,
that was 2018. Not sure when the ring camera thing started.
Well, don't try to break into my house because I have cameras everywhere.
I'm not going to try. Don't worry. But I know I have those, really.
Yes, I have teenagers.
Yes. That's why most people I know have cameras, is to see when their teenagers are coming and going.
Yes.
Hey, spring's here. The second holiday season, Mother's Day, Father's Day, college graduations, weddings, International Tuba Day. The list goes on. And what better way to celebrate all those occasions than with Drizzly, the go-to app for alcohol delivery. Right, Seton?
You're right. There isn't one. Drizzly makes it easy to shop local stores and compare prices on a huge selection of beer, wine, and spirits and get them delivered to your door.
Browse curated selections and recommended picks for whatever occasion you're celebrating. Maybe it's that new tuba you just bought. Right. Can't make it to the party? Drizzly lets you send the gift of alcohol right to your friends and family faster than you can find an F sharp.
So download the app and go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today. Must be 21 or older. Not available in all locations.
So download the app or go to drizzly.com. It's DRIZLY.com today. Well, that brings us to our guest today, South Carolina attorney Chad McGowan, founding partner of McGowan, Hood, Felder, and Phillips. Chad represents those who have been catastrophically injured as a result of others, like physicians, hospitals, and commercial vehicle operators. His extensive experience trying cases in front of a jury, and is the only attorney in South Carolina history to have 3 jury verdicts of medical malpractice cases over $10 million. Additionally, Chad has the current record for the largest personal injury settlement to a single plaintiff in excess of $40 million. He has been recognized as a South Carolina super lawyer every year since 2009 and is a member of the American Board of Trial Advocates, the South Carolina Association for Justice, and the American Association for Justice. Chad graduated from Emory Law School in 1995 and was then a law clerk for a federal judge. He then opened his own firm, which has evolved into the present day McGowan, Hood, Felder, and Phillips. He is admitted to practice the state and federal courts of South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia. Thanks for coming on, Chad. Appreciate it. Hello.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Let's start with something would be pretty basic to you, but maybe not to everybody, which is what Alex was doing. Workers' comp versus the umbrella policy. Why is he guiding the insurance pump people away from workers' comp to umbrella?
All right. So in South Carolina, unless you have a certain number of employees, you are not subject to the workers' comp law. I believe it's 3 employees. If you have less than 3 employees, you're not subject to the workers' comp law.
Okay.
And so the way that a domestic employment situation gets handled would be through traditional insurance and tort remedies versus workers' comp. And the main difference between those is workers' comp does not require that you show that the employer was at fault. If an injury happens while at work, you get some compensation. And in exchange for that more definiteness for the injured party is that there are limits on the amount of recovery. That doesn't really apply if you don't have enough employees to be subject to the law to begin with.
And that's in question because it's been reported that there were 2 other employees there at the time of the accident, a caretaker named Ronnie Freeman and another employee, Travis Martin. So my question is there an advantage for it to be workers' comp rather than falling under the umbrella policy.
And the big money's
Sure.
going to come. The big money's going to come from the umbrella policy, right?
Well, for a workers' comp claim, there are limits on how much you can recover. So a death case of someone of Miss Satterfield's age range, it's going to be based on her work life expectancy. It's probably going to be $200,000 at the most, just under the rules that apply in workers' comp. Traditional tort, which is non-workers' comp, it's whatever a jury would ultimately award in the case, which could be millions.
If she slips and falls versus dogs knocking her down, what is the difference there?
So in order to have tort liability, which is liability through the civil system, you have to show fault or negligence. And if she was tripping over her own feet, for instance, or just fell or got dizzy and as a result fell, or you don't know what happened, there would be no recovery for the Satterfield family.
Oh.
If they could show that the Murdaugh family or Alec or whomever was there was somehow negligent, failing to restrain an unruly dog, for instance, and caused it, is at fault for the injury, then you can hold the Murdaughs and their insurance company for that liable for their fault in causing the injury.
We've had a lot of listener questions about the dollar amount of this settlement. It was close to $4 million, and Gloria was an hourly employee who only made $10 an hour. Is this unusual?
So there are two reasons that I can discuss about why that particular settlement would be as high as it was. The first is the county where it happened is known for being pretty liberal. And especially if there's a death of someone like Miss Satterfield, life is very valuable to, at least from a monetary standpoint, for folks in that county. And they're known for giving very large verdicts for death cases and injury cases generally. Same case in, for instance, Greenville County or Lexington County, South Carolina. The inherent value is not going to be there just because people have a different view on the role of money in the civil justice system. So county matters. Higher verdicts is one thing. The other, which I think is probably more important, is that it's really hard to defend a case if the defendant is throwing the case, meaning that if the defendant is Alec Murdaugh, if he is throwing the case saying it's my fault, this never should have happened, yeah, we knew the dog was crazy and was going to cause a problem, then that makes it almost impossible to defend the case on the merits. And so you don't have the ability to take a discount as the insurance company to say, you might not win it because they're going to win it. And it's in a bad county. It's not in a bad county. It's in a good county from a plaintiff standpoint. So
Right.
Those two factors, that the defendant was going to throw the case essentially by admitting the problem, admitting he was at fault, and the location where it occurred, led to that amount of a settlement.
When we spoke the other day, you talked about this Tiger River, I don't know, would we call it a clause or?
Yeah, it's called the Tiger River Doctrine in South Carolina. And basically what that says is an insurance company is not allowed to gamble with their insured's money. So in this particular case, Alec Murdaugh would have written to the insurance company and said, you have to settle this case. I demand you settle this case within limits because I don't want my money, my assets at risk. That puts the insurance company in a bit of a pickle because if it's reasonable for them to settle and they don't, they've essentially now gotten rid of the limit of the policy. So if a jury under those circumstances was to award $10 million and there's only $5 million in coverage, the insurance company would be on the hook for the other $5 million, essentially an unlimited insurance policy. And it's a way to put pressure on insurance companies to settle cases in circumstances that need to be settled where they may otherwise want to fight it.
So you don't find it that unusual that the insurance company made this settlement?
The insurance company, just based on what I know, was in a bit of a bind. And that is, they're in a very unfriendly for them county. They have a defendant who is essentially admitting liability by virtue of the way this went down. And they were no doubt put under pressure by Alec Murdaugh and his lawyers that says, you need to settle this case. And whether that was done formally as a Tiger River letter, as we call them, or just being on the phone with them saying, settle this case, settle this case, settle this case, the insurance company was in a bit of an untenable position at that point.
So Alec settles, takes the money, runs. But I have a question. He's settling, but will he does he lose all potential of ever getting insurance again? Or does insurance rates go way up? Or what happens after that?
Well, generally speaking, that company would probably choose not to do business with someone in that circumstance again. Nautilus would probably say, no, thank you.
Uh-huh.
But that's not to say there's not 500 other companies that would be delighted to to write that business. And one of the reasons is that, what are the odds of lightning striking twice?
True.
And so many companies will say, well, that was an odd thing to happen, and it's unlikely to happen again. Although with some families, it seems more likely than others.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the lawsuit Nautilus has filed in federal court. Explain it to us.
Okay, so the lawsuit is the best lawsuit. The one that's got merit is Nautilus versus Murdaugh. And that is saying, Alec, you and yours lied to us. You committed a fraud on us. And as a result of that, we are out money. Now, the money that we're out ended up going to you and some others. It didn't go to this claim, but we are out money that you lied about, and you shouldn't have done that. That's pretty basic, straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
For Murdaugh then to point the finger at the Satterfield children and their lawyers is nonsense. Because from their perspective, they had a claim that against these third parties, the bank and the law firm and some others, for essentially stealing their money, for those that did. That claim is settled and resolved, and at this point, it is not possible to be undone because everybody knew there could be uncertainty, everybody knew there was risk, and they decided to get rid of that risk and uncertainty in exchange for a payment.
They signed off.
They signed off on it, and that's sort of what, when we write these releases, they say things like, all claims known and unknown, accrued and unaccrued from the beginning of time to the end of the universe kind of stuff. Right. And it's designed to be as broad as possible so that once the deal is signed and the check changes hands, it's done. And you can't really go back on it.
I'm confused. Why is Nautilus owed money back?
Well,
does that make sense?
Because Nautilus never should have paid a penny to anybody to begin with. Because this was a bogus. They say this is a bogus claim that was based on lies and fraud. And as a result, the fact that they paid $1 was based on Alec's fraud. Right. Now they're not trying to get it back from the Satterfield boys or anybody. They're trying to get it back from the person who they say defrauded them. Which, given the amount of money he actually got from it, that seems like a pretty good argument.
But they did get in line with all the people that want money from Alec, right?
Yes, that's right. And from what I understand, that line is very, very long and very cranky.
Well, and we also, in this suit, I think Palmetto State Bank is named, and Fleming and Westingdorf, who worked for Palmetto State Bank. I think there are a few other people that potentially they could receive money from.
That's right, because those are the people that took the money.
Right.
I probably should add an allegedly in there, at least for everybody but Mr. Murdaugh, who's admitted it. They are the custodians. They have the money. They have the ill-gotten gains. Now, they probably spend it or pay taxes or not, or who knows. But they were the recipients of that money. And Nautilus says, this money was procured by fraud. I'm tracing it to into whose hands it is, and I want it back.
Right. So that's where it'll end right now, is everybody Nautilus will try to get a little piece from the people in the lawsuit. But the Satterfields they don't have to worry about anything at all.
If I were their lawyers, if I were Eric Bland and company, I would tell them exactly what Eric's telling them, which is, you're fine. You didn't do anything wrong. They're trying to, this Murdaugh crowd is trying to victimize you again by saying that this was all a fraud and that they're supposed to come after you now. So that's in my judgment, that's what's occurring.
What is the upside to Alec doing this? Because obviously it's not going to change the money situation. He's broke. He's got nothing to, he's not going to pay anybody.
Well, and he confessed judgment. He confessed that he did this.
And 2 days of testimony where he went through all of this stuff.
Yeah. So why is he doing it now? I mean, why does he come out now?
I really don't understand the strategy behind trying to impugn the Satterfield heirs and the lawyers. I don't know why I don't know what advantage that gives them under the circumstance.
I think John was saying that maybe he wants to get a federal charge so he can go to a federal pen. Is that something that could happen?
Well, I mean, the feds are going to do what they're going to do regardless, and whether whether he's in there, admitting or denying a dog did it or not. I mean, the federal government they're going to bring a case based on the evidence or they're not. And so I don't think that would have any impact one way or the other. I mean, it may be something as banal as let's just cause them some trouble. I mean, who knows?
One question was asked of me, and I think I know the answer to this, but someone who, like Alec, who has done personal injury stuff forever, they're like, how was he so quick to figure out to say it was the dogs when, he didn't have, they said it was right from the get-go. He like went to a restaurant and started saying, oh, my dogs, dogs, dogs. Does that surprise you on how your attorney minds work?
Well, I mean, you're assuming that this was actually an accident.
True.
Which it may, who knows what the evidence is. It may not have been, right? Because if you're going to, it's okay to be quick-witted, but to come up with a purported scheme of this kind, that I'm going to falsely claim it was dogs when it wasn't, and it just so happened that she fell and, essentially had a fatal injury. And it's now that we go immediately to the dogs means that you're really, really, really up on fraud, and you're like, man, I'm just waiting for my opportunity, or there's something more to it. I mean, who knows?
I gotcha.
And we should mention that SLED still has an open investigation into the death of Gloria Satterfield.
Correct. Well,
right. We just don't know what the underlying facts are, but I could construct a set of facts where if one had nefarious intent and they knew about insurance and homeowners coverage and all this kind of stuff, where, we'd leave, we may be leaving marbles on the staircase, or it might be a little nudge. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's,
wow. Yeah.
I don't know what the evidence is, but to be that quick with a purported scheme of this kind would be pretty impressive amount of illegality.
Wow.
Or there was more deliberation that has yet to be discovered.
This has been great, Chad. Really appreciate it, man.
We appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure. Good to talk to you anytime.
All right, man. We'll talk soon. See ya. We wanted to bring up something about last episode when Snyder was on talking about Parker's and the Mallory Beach lawsuit.
Yeah, I think there's been some pushback about the culpability of Parker's in the boating accident. And we are willing to talk to anybody. We like to hear all sides, present everything as we've done all along. And we invite anybody to talk to us and present their side.
Right. Of course, that's reasons there are lawsuits, because some attorneys feel this way and some attorneys feel this way. And then there's a judge or a jury. So you have opposing views? Pitch us.
Absolutely. And also, all along, if we've made a mistake, which with the volume of information in this case, we've made a few along the way, and we always correct them and admit them. We're not scared of it.
Not scared at all. Believe it or not, we've made mistakes. I know we don't want to admit it. No, we do. We gladly admit it. All right, reach out. How do they find us?
You can find us on Facebook, which is Murdaugh Podcast, or on our website, which is murdaughpodcast.com.
Email me, mattharrispodcast@gmail.com, and we'll talk soon, friend.